All right, we're back at the DNC. Greg Ferenstein joins us. Ferenstein Wire, and your latest book?
The Age of Optimists. Hi, guys.
Hey. So you've written recently about Silicon Valley and their political bent, which you cover a lot. Mm-hmm. So you wrote about Peter Thiel, for example, speaking at the Trump convention, and how he was an outlier.
Yeah.
So let's just start on that, and then I want to talk about the DNC in a second. I imagine that most of the Silicon Valley people, the workers, but more importantly the donors, are corporatist Democrats, what I would call corporatist Democrats. Here's what I mean by that. They're socially liberal because they're young, they're well-educated, so they're not going to hate gay people. That's outrageous and silly. Or generally be racist or anything along those lines. But they're enormously wealthy, so they're going to want trade deals and the ability to bring in immigrant labor, for them high-tech immigrant labor, and lower taxes, etc. Is that generally true, or is that a misconception?
I would say that's generally true, but I would reframe it. So when you say a corporatist Democrat, that's true that there is a faction of the Democratic Party that is very pro-capitalist. It's because what they want out of the state is fundamentally different than what the Sanders labor union wing wants. They want government to be an investor, not a regulator, because what makes their world go round are people being as creative as possible. So that means funding for education, immigration, free trade, a more globalized world. So they're a different political beast than either libertarians or traditionally liberals. And that is the overwhelming percentage of Silicon Valley and educated Democrats who have professions and who live in big cities.
So I both agree with that and would like to challenge it at the same time. So I think it's a mix. So on the one hand, I think that a lot of them do have those ideals. I get that. On the other hand, let us not underestimate how much somebody will get themselves to believe something if it is to their financial advantage. So, for example, Apple, some years pays 0% taxes. That has nothing to do with being creative, other than creative accounting. That has to do with, I would like an extra couple of $1 billion, and I'd like to put it in my pocket.
And you're absolutely right. I am not saying that these folks are not self-interested. But their brand of business is not opposed to government like a libertarian, because if they were just pro-capitalist, they would be libertarians voting for Rand Paul or Gary Johnson. But they're not. They're pro-capitalist and pro-government. And one of the interesting things that they tend to support are a broad social safety net to have enough customers to buy their product.
Right. Now, so that's all very logical, and I agree with them on that. How about the Thiel wing? How big is the conservative or libertarian? Let's separate out those two. Is there a conservative wing in the Valley at all among those incredibly wealthy donors? Let's talk about the donors, because the donors in this case are more relevant than the voters, unfortunately, in this system. So is there a wing that's like, no, I kind of like what Trump's saying. I like that nativist stuff. I really liked 1955, back when we were in charge.
So there is a Trump wing, but not for those reasons. So I have an exclusive sample of tech CEOs that I poll to do a representative opinion survey of what Silicon Valley thinks. Now, about 20% of startup founders want Trump, which quadrupled from last January. The reasons they give aren't because they really like Trump or because they're racist or bigoted, or what I guess the more diplomatic term is like pro-European ancestry. They want him because...
That's barely diplomatic, by the way.
I know. You're trying to... Like, I try to give the other... Look,
right.
I think he's awful. But I try to give the other side a diplomatic, frame just because,
yes.
I would want that. Okay, so they like him because he's the uber disruptor. Silicon Valley often likes things that are new and brash and can destroy whatever it is. They like Trump because they think he's going to wreck the two-party system.
So I'm not buying it, and I'll tell you why. Okay, so it seems like a logical argument, but if they wanted the ultimate disruptor, they had that candidate. That was Bernie Sanders. He would have actually disrupted things. So my sense is that those 20% are conservatives largely because of financial interest and they know that Trump will cut taxes by trillions of dollars. They know Bernie Sanders would have done the opposite, and that kind of disruption they liked a little less.
You know what? I would agree with you. When I try to find an overarching logic for someone for supporting Donald Trump, I just get a headache. So you just can't think too much about it. All I know is what they say in the survey. They're like,
right,
I don't
okay.
like Trump, but I support him because I think he's going to break up this unimaginative two-party system. But the overwhelming amount of donations and support goes to Hillary Clinton. Clinton got $1.2 million from the tech industry. Trump got $2,500.
That is comical.
2 orders of magnitude.
So let's talk about that for a second and just broaden it out a little bit. And I want to come back to the Valley in a second, but what is your sense of the donors overall with Trump? Is he really never going to recover and get industrial-sized donations the way other candidates have in the past and the way Hillary Clinton is getting it right now? Are they worried, wait a minute, these trade wars could be disastrous? When he says we might not pay our debts as a country, that would be global economic collapse. They're just not going to risk it with this guy?
Yeah, I think the business class in general is extremely frightened of Trump just because you don't know what you're getting. And that's kind of a fact. He says he's not going to put out any specific policies because that's not the kind of campaign he runs. Well, if you have a lot of money vested in a stable financial system, then you're probably not going to support that guy. That goes doubly for Silicon Valley because they also tend to be Democrats.
So in the past, I think that business interests have used instability as an excuse. Oh, if I had the stability of knowing that I have lower taxes, well, I can give you stability too. Here's 50% taxes. It's stable. Go forward, right? Oftentimes they use it as an excuse, but in this case, I don't think they're using it as an excuse. I think they're actually worried about instability.
Oh yeah, because it's Russian roulette with Trump. He may be great, he may not be, but you just don't know because he doesn't put out any specifics, and he says a lot of crazy things like building a wall and whatever else. But the more important idea is that Silicon Valley represents a very large wing of the Democrats. Starting in the 80s, college-educated voters left Reagan and they went to the Democrats. The Democrats took those voters and fundamentally changed how they approach trade, education, labor unions, and regulation. And with the ascension of Clinton tonight, it's the permanent ascendancy of what Bill Clinton called the New Democrats in the 90s.
I totally disagree.
What? Do it, because they'll be entertained.
Okay, yes. So here's my sense of it. I didn't get a chance to. I read all the articles that you mentioned earlier. By the way, organically, that's part of the reason we had you on, because it was super interesting. You make really great points about how the Valley views it and the spectrum that we just talked about.
Thank you.
I did not get a chance to read your latest about college-educated Democrats voting more for Hillary Clinton, so I'm a little behind the 8 ball on that because you have information that I haven't had access to yet.
Yeah.
But I will say this. Look, I think that the country is headed in a direction where they are tired of the donors controlling the politicians. I think that is true on the right, as you see with Trump. Some version of that anger has been directed in that direction towards Trump. I think that's certainly true of the Sanders supporters. And I think that momentum is only growing. So I think that when you look at the Clinton branch of the Democratic Party, I believe this is their last election. And I believe that they will get routed in 2020 from a tsunami of populism because the overwhelming number of Americans have stagnant wages. And so no matter how much we tell them, you're in great shape, don't worry, the economy's recovered, the stock market is great, they don't actually feel it because their wages have been stagnant for decades. And I think that anger is leading to this populism, which I think is justified because I think the donors do control the politicians. And so I have a completely different view of it.
Well, so when you look at the numbers, the more education you have, if you have a graduate degree and so higher, the more likely you are to vote for Clinton. Now, a lot of the new jobs coming out require a college education, require access to global markets, require high-skilled workers to help build the company that's going to get you a job, or have Uber and Lyft and allow you to tap into that gig economy so you can make ends meet. That type of worker, which is growing, needs a fundamentally different role for government. They need the government to invest, still tax, still regulate a bit, but invest in everyone's ability to get 21st century skills. Now, that's going to be more likely to come out of the Clinton wing, which is a little less redistributive, but much more investment prone.
So, number one, the Republicans are going to block that. So we're never going to like if you're right about your or that vision.
Yeah.
It would actually be really interesting to see if people would rally behind it. But I don't think we're ever going to get that opportunity because I think the Hillary Clinton is going to go in and compromise with the Republicans on things that they agree with. They're never going to compromise with her on things like building out infrastructure. So we're never going to find out.
So what they may do is compromise with her on her version of free college, which, by the way, was not a capitulation to Sanders. Her husband proposed it in 1993. Was this idea of everyone gets loan forgiveness if they can use that money to A, work during college, and then B, help the government in distressed communities, which are costing the state and federal government money anyways. So it is a compromise that doesn't say you get college just because you have a right to have college. It's a belief that says we need you to get college and we have problems that are costing us money. The Republicans may go with Clinton on that.
I would be shocked. But we'll see. We'll see. And so, look, Greg, though, overall, you have this vision that we are going to use, that the Silicon Valley guys are going to win, and that the Clinton is going to get to actually invest in the economy. Yeah. That's not a vision I disagree with very much. So that's a pretty good vision because I'm in that camp. I'm a capitalist, but I think we need the government to build highways and bridges and sometimes give free college education so that you could have more opportunity and more people who can have the ability to succeed and add to the economy, etc. And I don't support Bernie Sanders because he's more redistributive. In fact, I'm positive I'm far more moderate on that than he is. But none of that addresses the core of the problem, which is who's making the rules. And if it turns out that the donors who give the money are the ones that are writing the rules, which in today's politics, they most certainly are, none of that is going to come to fruition because at the end of the day, the rich and the powerful are going to set the rules as they have already to their benefit and not to the benefit of the average American. So I think that frustration will not be solved, hence the populism will win out, I think, as it should.
Well, so let me say, I think there's things that a president can do and there's things that they can't. That is, people are worried about stagnant wages, and that's a fact, but I don't know if a president can change that. A lot of the jobs that we depended on to have stable wages, manufacturing, they're gone. They're not coming back. The more likely jobs of the future are these gig economy jobs, Airbnb, Uber, and Lyft. And so it's about training citizens to be adaptable in a 21st century economy. I think it's an illusion, and this is me opining not on my expertise about what Silicon Valley thinks, I think it may be an illusion to believe that we can bring the 1960s economy back. And if we can't, we need a fundamentally different role for government. And I'm not sure the Bernie Sanders labor union wing understands that.
So, well, whether they understand that or not might be different than whether they win or not. So we'll see about that. And I don't think that the labor wing is to me far less relevant than the populist wing. I think there's almost no labor wing left. All the labor has is money, but they don't have a lot of the ground troops that they used to have. But I want to end on this thought.
Sure.
If the Valley is really interested in disruption, you know what is the most disruptive thing? An amendment. An amendment literally rewrites the code. So they should be super excited about the idea of rewriting the code in a way that is more just, more democratic, disruptive, creative. So I believe that there's a case to be made that you can go to the Valley and go, and this, I believe, will tell whether they're earnest in their thirst for disruption and creativity and fixing the system, or they just want lower taxes. If they say, hey, an amendment, for example, to get money out of politics, so that these politicians don't serve the donors anymore, but they serve the people. Wow, that's a great hack. Or if they go, nah, I'm not that interested because I'm the donor.
Yeah, no. That's very good, and I would agree with that. And I think a lot of people in Silicon Valley supported a guy named Lawrence Lessig, who ran for president entirely just to get campaign finance reform done. And he has a really radical vision for it, which would basically give every single citizen an equal amount of money to donate campaigns, and then ban the very large donations from millionaires and billionaires. And I think that the Valley supported that vision by supporting Lessig's attempt at the presidency, but we should hold their feet to the fire in case they renege on that during the next administration.
Well, Larry Lessig's a great friend of mine, and the godfather of the getting money out of politics movement. And if the Valley is earnest, they will continue to support that no matter what electoral machinations happen in this cycle or any other cycle, and that would go towards proving whether they're genuine in their, in their desire to fix democracy and be disruptive. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see how that goes.
Yeah, and you hold their feet to the fire.
I absolutely will. All right, Greg, thank you so much.